Good morning, everybody, and welcome. Welcome on this rainy day. I'm the Reverend Christine Dance, and I'm honored to serve as the minister of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Phoenix. Welcome to our online worship, and welcome back, Mary Coda from maternity leave. We are so glad to have you back with us again today. In this time when we are physically distant, we believe act of love to up online and to be together in this way. Welcome home. For those of you who are getting to know us for the first time, welcome. We actually have a Get to Know UUCP gathering after service, and we invite you to join us. The Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Phoenix strives to be a spiritual community for our time, this time, focused on diverse theological perspectives, radical inclusion, and knowing that issues of justice and equity shape everything we do. With a special awareness for those who have been historically marginalized, we welcome all, of every race, class, ethnicity, immigration status, sexual orientation, gender identity, religious background, mental and physical ability, and disability. We welcome you, your family, your whole self into worship as we build a community of caring and courage and hope. Our opening words this morning are by Sean Green about consent, the topic of our service. The poem is called Not Just for Sex. Consent is not just for sex when intrusion is not checked, pushing past the very walls meant to protect integrity. At the risk of sanity, a sad victim of disrespect, what's considered mildly rude moves into realms that abuse. These boundaries set by privileged folk from the place of power's throne might made right by consequence of desires that few admit. While protections are instilled, enjoyed within their four walls, then forgotten when applied to the ones found outside. The very same would be condemned when meted out to their clan of violators without regard for consent outside of bounds. I invite you to grab a chalice or a candle from your home as we recite our covenant and we light our chalice together. My wife, Karen, will light the chalice here in our sanctuary. Love is the doctrine of our congregation. The quest for truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, and to share our strength in fellowship. Thus do we covenant.
Good morning, all. My name is Katie Quinn, and I am honored to be serving as your worship associate this morning. Let me introduce our worship team. We have our music director, Benji Messer, our director of children's ministries, Katie Resendez, and in our tech team today, we have Chris Bolvareda, Justin Walgren, and our chat chaplain is Brad Chapman. And we welcome back Mary Coda, back from maternity leave, bringing us her music today. Our chat is open. You can chat with everyone or just our panelists. And please note that there is closed captioning available for this service through the button called Live Transcript at the bottom of your screen. As always, we invite you to check in to UUCP on our social media with the hashtag UUAnywhere. I have a few announcements this morning about the life of our community. All of these announcements can be found on our weekly online newsletter, Compass. You can sign up for Compass on our website at phoenixuu.org. A reminder that our Get to Know UUCP gathering will be immediately after this service. We welcome newcomers, visitors, or anyone who's just curious to join us. On January 31st, we're having a service recognizing the individual and collective grief that our country has faced as a result of COVID-19. We know that there are a lot of big griefs that you are having, but we'd also like to hear about the small ones and the complicated ones you've had, like not being able to go shopping, or not seeing your grandkids, or not being able to go on that trip you really wanted to go on. You can share your griefs on the form in Compass or the link in your chat. We have some great adult faith development classes for this spring, all on Zoom. You can register on the link. Registration is now open for adult classes at UUCP on Zoom with titles like Great UU Sermons, Dream Work, Rise Up and Call Her Name, and UU Encounters with the Bible. You can grow and learn and make new connections all at the same time. Very importantly, please mark your calendars for this Saturday night, January 30th at 7 p.m. This is our annual fundraiser. Instead of our auction, we are having a storytelling event. And here's a quick video to tell you more.
Have you heard UUCP is having a fundraiser? Adventure Tales, a radically inclusive evening of storytelling. January 30, 7 p.m., Zoom meeting. You won't want to miss this.
In 2010, we had the infamous Senate Bill 1070, the anti-immigration measure, the show us your papers measure.
Today, being a gay parent is more accepted. But in 1978, as I understood it, the courts were taking kids away from their gay parents just for the fact of them being gay.
The circa 1960 classroom desks were arranged in a conversational horseshoe in room 202 of the Language and Literature building at ASU. Dr. Sandoval is perched precipitously on the ledge of a dishwater brown desk in the front of the room, keenly attuned to the chatter of the 13 women comprising her feminism in the Americas class.
This is just a sample of the stories you're going to hear on the night of Adventure Tales, a radically inclusive evening. Don't forget to tune in.
So please join us for an evening we'll be talking about for years to come. And finally, we are collecting our offering virtually, just like our service. Consent works in so many ways. One is our financial support of the congregation. We say that the offering is a sacrament of the free church. What we mean by that is that we believe it is a blessing to be able to govern and support our religious community ourselves, to make possible by our generosity everything we dream of and to live out our shared values. There is no coercion, no one making you do this. We do it freely and with total consent. The offering is an evidence of that consent and our generosity. It is our harvest, gathered in every week for what most nourishes us. You can text UUCP $ to 73256. You can donate through the website, or you can send a paper check. For all that you give to our congregation, we are so very grateful.
Hi all. I've had some joyful moments this week and sort of a sense that we can accomplish things together here in this country. And I'd like to share a song with you together about lifting each other up by the civil rights leader Faya Rose Touré. The lyrics will be in the chat. I'm gonna lift my sister up, she is not heavy. I'm gonna lift my sister up, she is not heavy. I'm gonna lift my sister up, she is not heavy. If I don't lift her up, I will fall down. My brother, I'm gonna lift my brother up, he is not heavy. I'm gonna lift my brother up, he is not heavy. I'm gonna lift my brother up, he is not heavy. If I don't lift him up, I will fall down. And my neighbor, I'm gonna lift my neighbor up, they are not heavy. I'm gonna lift my neighbor up, they are not heavy. I'm gonna lift my neighbor up, they are not heavy. If I don't lift them up, I will fall down. And my people, I'm gonna lift my people up, they are not heavy. I'm gonna lift my people up, they are not heavy. I'm gonna lift my people up, they are not heavy. If I don't lift them up, if I don't lift them up, if I don't lift them up, I will fall down. Thanks, all.
Consent is an agreement reached between two individuals or parties after free and thoughtful consideration, in which the parties share a common language and understanding, and both are able to agree from a place of strength or position of power. Hi, good morning. I'm Katie Resendez, and I'm the Director of Children's Ministry here at UUC Phoenix. That definition of consent didn't come from this dictionary, which you can probably tell because consent starts with a C, and that's not where I should be reading from. It does. That was earth-shaking. Whoa. That definition comes from our OWL curriculum. Our Whole Lives is the Unitarian Universalist and UCC curriculum for lifespan sexuality education. But it's not just about being physically intimate. It's about relationships and how we choose to be together as people of Unitarian Universalist beliefs. And that definition of consent is pretty amazing. And just like the poem that Rev. Christine read earlier, it's not just about sex. It's not just about people being physically intimate. It's about all the ways we interact in relationships or as communities with each other, coming to agreements and making decisions. So let's look at it again. Consent is an agreement reached between two individuals or parties, more than one individual or parties. So groups coming up with an agreement together. So sometimes that's easy. Sometimes that's which side of the roads we drive down. And we've all consented to traffic laws most of the time. What those agreements are can also be trickier and harder. And sometimes they're a lot more subtle. When to hang out, who gets to talk first. There's all sorts of different ones. But we make agreements with one another constantly. So how do we do that? And how do we do that in a way that represents consent? First thing the definition says is it has to be reached freely and thoughtfully. So that means there can't be pressure on either party, on anyone in it, to go one way or another. And maybe not even the expectation that they go one way or another. And thoughtfully means that sometimes we have to give each other time and space to think through what they want and what they're going to decide. And that says we need a common language and shared understanding. So that means when we're asking something of someone, we have to make sure that we're talking about the same thing. And sometimes that's a matter of just explaining it, making sure our words are clear, especially if we're communicating across ages. When we ask a kid if they want grape juice, it's probably not a great idea to say, would you like to imbibe some pre-aged wine? Because the language just isn't going to fall right. So we have to have a common understanding. And then it says that the decision has to be made where each individual is in a place of strength or a position of power. And what I want you to think about is that it means that people have to have access to their strengths. So maybe they shouldn't be medicated or inebriated, right? Anything that clouds your brain, that's not great for consent. In fact, it's not consent. Making sure that they are able to say what they mean and have time to speak and think through everything, that gives them access to their strengths, access to the tools they have. Okay, so consent. Consent is an agreement. So when people decide something together, in which the parties are able to think through the thing, each individually, they have a shared understanding of what the thing is, and they're able to access their tools. Do you want this delicious waffle I made? It's got tomatoes and whitefish and cheese. Are you sure? Are you sure? The moment we enter into consent is when I ask the question, and I don't just say, do you want this waffle? I make sure to describe what the waffle is. Giving the other person time to consider is important. The are you sure is pressure. It doesn't work. And it also means that I'm not believing the person when they say, Katie, that tomato and fish and cheese waffle sounds disgusting. Or maybe it's just not something I would like. Entering into consent and choosing to build a culture of consent means believing someone when they say no. Because when you ask a question, if it's not a real question, if no isn't an option, then the yes is meaningless too. So we have to think about, how do we build a culture of consent? How do we give each other time? How do we make sure that we honor the choices one another is making? How do we make sure that we're not pushing someone to make the decision we want them to? Be it about any aspect of our lives. Because building consent and a culture of consent and practicing consent makes our community stronger. It says, I see you, and I believe what's in your heart, and I believe your words, and I know that you have an amazing and beautiful brain, and you're going to use it to make a decision. And I'm going to trust you in making that decision. So consent. Let's work together to make agreements that are thoughtful, that share a common language, and that each of us are able to access our positions of power. Because we're all pretty darn powerful, and we want to show each other that we're loved, and consent is such a loving act. Okay, you've learned your lesson about consent. You've all taken notes and written down the definition, right? Maybe don't pull out the dictionary if you forget the definition. Check out the Our Whole Lives website, okay? I'll put the link in the chat. Now, we are going to listen to a song that is a redo of one of my least favorite songs ever. We have some music to share, and it's going to feel a little out of season, but I'm cold, and the song is really just about being cold. So just a few years ago, this song was very popular, but then it was called out as being really, really awful when it comes to consent. So a whole bunch of artists went and fixed it. Note that the original song, the female singer's lines, stayed the exact same, but the responses are, well, more consent-oriented. Enjoy.
I really can't stay.
Yo, baby, I'm fine with that.
I've gotta go away.
Baby, I'm cool with that.
This evening has
Been hoping you'd get home
so
safe.
very nice.
I'm glad you had a real good time.
Mother will start to
We'll call her so she knows that you're
My
coming.
father will be pacing the floor.
Better get your car
But
humming.
really, I better scurry?
No rush.
Should I use the front or back door?
Well, which one are you pulling
The
towards
neighbors
more?
might think
That you're a real nice girl.
Say, what's in this drink?
Pomegranate LaCroix.
I wish I knew how.
Maybe I can help
to
you
break
out.
this spell.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I ought to say no, no, no.
Well, you
sir.
reserve the right to say no.
At least I'm gonna say that I tried.
You reserve the right to say
I
no.
really can't stay.
Well, you don't have to. Baby, it's cold outside.
I've gotta get home.
Do you know how to get there from here?
Say, where is my coat?
Well, I'll go and grab it, my dear.
You've really been
We'll
grand.
have to do this
Yes,
again.
I agree.
How about the Cheesecake Factory?
We're bound to be talking tomorrow.
Text me at your earliest
Well, at
convenience.
least I've been getting that vibe.
Unless I catch pneumonia and
I'll
die.
be on my way.
Thanks for a great night.
Baby, it's cold outside. Okay.
See you tomorrow.
Okay.
I hope.
So much fun. I hope you caught Brad's comment of where are Bernie mittens. So it is the time when we share the joys and sorrows of our community. Being together, it is good to share, to support each other, and to connect. Please write any joys or sorrows that you want our community to know about. Please put your name at the beginning so I know who it is. If you want it to be private and only shared with the panelists, please put the word private at the beginning. I'll hold it in my heart. I'm going to ask that you make your joys and sorrows personal. I will be mentioning a few of our world. And here are a few of them. First of all, I do want to make sure that we've got the right connection there for next week's service. The Google document where you can share your griefs, small and big, for us will be in the chat. So for many of us, Wednesday was a day of joy and hope. And I just want to acknowledge that I know that not everything is perfect and not everything is fixed. But for one day, we could breathe, we could celebrate some firsts and some very inspiring women. And I hope that you all got to see some history making there. And speaking of breath, we give our prayers and energies to all of those who are struggling with COVID. Our congregation has had people who have been sick the last few weeks. Many more of us know people who are sick. Many more of us have lost people that we love, and it is getting worse. For your breath, for our collective breath, and for those who cannot breathe on their own, we pray. So let us turn to the joys and sorrows in our community. And Bill Snowden and the Sanctuary Art team say it's a joy to bring you a video of the art from the Distributed Artist Collective of Arizona. We would have that up in the sanctuary if we were meeting in person. And you can see the link in the chat, and it will be up on the website if you just chat art. And Francis says, a sorrow, my friend and former co-worker Tara passed away. Deep grief. Sending love to you. Amanda Rogers says, I got my first COVID shot Friday. Hooray. We're going to celebrate every single one of those. I'm so glad for you, Amanda. John Reed says, a joy. I got a reservation for a COVID jab on next Friday. That's terrific. Bonnie Frazier says, a dear friend is fighting COVID, about to go on a ventilator. Neil Douglas says, finding it hard, adjusting to a very different new year. Sending you lots of love, Neil. The Perez family says they are mourning the death of our beloved, very, very elderly, blind, toothless dachshund, Osric. Ozzy was a ridiculous dog and we loved him very much. I'm so, so sorry to hear that. Much love to your family. Beverly Hart got her first COVID shot on Friday. Oh, so glad to hear that, Miss Beverly. A sorry and worry from John Featherston. John's brother and his wife Randy and Kathy are ill at home with COVID. They are ill but fairly stable. Those who pray or send meditation of healing, please include them in your healing thoughts. So for Randy and Kathy, we do. Eric Arellano has a sorrow. The bike that I've used for the last few years was stolen yesterday. I learned how to ride a bike on it. I learned late and I have tons of memories with it. Oh, how terrible. Stuart says, a sorrow. John was admitted to the PICU at Phoenix Children's due to a diabetes diagnosis brought on by a virus. Joy is that he's out of the ICU and we're watching from PCH and are learning our new life with diabetes. Oh, Stuart, that is a big change. Sending you lots of love and let's find a way to connect soon. Mira Shaw has a joy and a sorrow. On Wednesday morning, I got my first COVID shot. On the way home, had an accident. I'm sorry, I couldn't stop biology. That just had to happen. Mira, let me read that over again. On Wednesday morning, I got my first COVID shot. On the way home, I had an accident. My car may be totaled, but I'm fine. Oh, Mira, sending you love. Sorrow from Mike and Debbie Carr Taylor. Our college daughter tested positive for COVID and isn't feeling great right now. We're sending healing energy to her, but are so worried. Of course you are. We will be sending that as well. Leslie Stahlkopf says, my daughter receives her second vaccination 3 days before she has to return to teach in person. And this is from friends of ours. Hanlon's gratefully consent to this virtual connectedness. We miss you, Rev. We miss you too, Jen and Aaron. Dan Hunn says, my wife, a teacher, got her first COVID shot Friday. Hooray! Carrie Lifshitz says, so happy to have volunteered at an educator pod for vaccines Friday. So happy to see so many get vaccinated. Thank you for helping out with that, Carrie. And the Thessings mourn 17-year-old cat Nini and adopting out 3 foster kittens and also celebrating the inauguration. We're sorry about your loss. Rose Pascoe says, joy, yesterday I received my first COVID vaccine shot. Hooray! We're gonna celebrate every single one of these, y'all. Thessings also, Mel got their second COVID vaccination today. Hooray! Sorrow, Sylvia Lamas Sharma says, my brother Jim in California in memory care with COVID. Oh, will test positive for months and my sister is in quarantine as she was with him at the ER last week for 4 hours. She's getting tested in 4 days. Oh, you all, this is so heartbreaking, all of this. John Hone says, sorrow, my mother passed away on January 6th, and joy learning to treasure memories of her. John, you are in our hearts. And Navi says, yay for Rose. Thank you, Navi. And we've got a joy from Cristobal of hailing and raining hard in Gilbert. Yes, the rain is a blessing. Natalie Faber says, my mom, who has been alone and isolated for months while grieving the loss of my dad, just got her first vaccine. Such complicated things here, y'all. Sending so much love to all of you for all of the angst, the worry, the joys, and all of that that's on top of everything that we're all still holding. So I invite you to a time of meditation and prayer. And we talked about breath before, the things, those who have had their breath taken away, the breath that has returned to us. It's been a long week. It's been a long month. It's been a really long year. Is there anyone else out there that's just feeling exhausted? Exhausted with relief, exhausted from worry, exhausted, just exhausted. So we're going to take a minute and breathe together. I want you, with your breaths, to try to go deeper than where you normally go. Try to have it fill your lungs. Fill it deep, fill it wide. Fill all of that space. And you can follow my pace or find your own. So I invite you to breathe in love and breathe out hate. Let it go. Breathe in peace. And breathe out strife. Breathe in hope. And expel out the fear. Breathe in comfort. And breathe out worry. Now just breathe with me. For all of the joys and sorrows that have been stated, and for all those that remain in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts, we say Amen. Blessed be, and Ashe.
Today's topic is consent in the time of COVID. However, consent is not a new concept. It is just something we don't often consider. Every day we consent. We consent to laws. You stop at the red light, don't you? We agree without even thinking. We consent every time we download an app or sign up on a website, that privacy policy that nobody reads. The unspoken language of consent is everywhere. We usually take it for granted so that we can cooperate and move on. That is until you lose it. When you find out that that website has been selling your data, or when a lawmaker was part of a scandal, or when your yes was misused and misrepresented. Suddenly, we become aware of consent when we weren't before. What's even harder is when your no isn't listened to, when what you disagreed to is ignored. How about when your consent is coerced, when no wasn't even an option? For many of us, in many situations, consenting or not isn't even a consideration. It's a privilege that we take for granted when we have it. Prior to the pandemic, consent was often framed in the terms of the Me Too movement. I am currently living on a college campus where the statistics are that 1 in 5 women will be sexually assaulted. When I arrived on campus, I was pulled aside by one of the older girls who was giving me a tour. She had asked her male counterpart to leave so she could talk to me and the other girl. When he left, she informed us that last year she had had a harassment issue on campus, and that despite the school saying that they would handle the situation, she was never informed of any repercussions that the male whom she had reported had received. She was left with little to no resources or support and had to find her own uneasy resolution, knowing that this boy was still sleeping a few rooms down from her. Did she have a choice in her consent to this reality? The fear of backlash and the shame society has created around sexual assault paints a zipper across our mouths, and we quietly disappear into the blackness that is that statistic. When I was in 6th grade, I was being harassed by a boy in class. I really struggled to get him to stop, and I was so worried about protecting his image that I didn't tell anyone. After weeks of trying to handle it on my own, I finally told a trusted teacher, but I felt so guilty that I asked that he not get in trouble, just that he be asked to stop. However, it continued. In both of these situations, the girl I met and I were each scared of what would happen if we spoke up further. We were fooled into thinking we had the ability to consent. Our institutions made us believe that they would protect us, but when it came to the moment that we needed our consent, we were left to fend for ourselves. Sometimes we have to work together to create a community that is safe for all to thrive in and that protects our choices, because we cannot rely on others to choose whether our consent will be heard or not. Consent should always be heard and validated, whether you are consenting to something to happen or not to happen. It is your choice, and that should always be respected. The following song is called Quiet. It became popular after the 2017 Women's March, in which women were reacting to a president that thought he could just grab women and who didn't respect consent. This is a performance at UUCP the following summer.
This past summer, we had some friends visit us from out of town. Now, in any other year, that would be the most normal sentence ever. But this year, it was a big, big deal. Like many of you, we hadn't seen friends for many months, much less had anyone travel to visit us or vice versa. But we had an opportunity and we desperately missed our friends. We were also very nervous, but we knew they were taking this very seriously. But it would involve a plane flight, and they worked in healthcare. And I remember it was the summer, so we still didn't know all of the information of how this spread, but we really wanted to make this work, but make it work safely. So first, we had to have the call. You know the call. Have you had the calls about the boundaries? I hope you have. We were pretty nervous about the call. I mean, what if they got mad? What if they thought we were overreacting? Okay, so what have you guys been doing to keep safe? Yeah, us too. And what's been your general level of concern during this? Oh yeah, us too, definitely. But right, yeah, there's a flight. And we know that the virus incubates for 10 days, so you'll be here for 7. So we're gonna have to keep up whatever we decide to do for the whole time. Yeah, I know, that's gonna be hard. But we're gonna have to go into this assuming that any of us might be positive and do anything we can do to keep each other safe. So are you guys willing to get tested before you leave? Okay, good, us too. You're planning on doing what on the plane? N95 masks and then a cloth mask over it, okay, and a face shield. Okay, we're gonna need a picture of that. And 4 layers of gloves? You'll take one off at security, one after you get on the plane, one after you deplane, and one after you get your suitcase? Well, okay then. Y'all, I'm not kidding. They really did this. They looked ridiculous and adorable. Okay, yeah, so when we pick you up, we're not gonna be able to hug. We're not gonna hug all week. That's gonna be hard. And we have to keep masks on in the car. And then you wanna take a shower afterwards? Okay, that makes sense. We're gonna be sharing space together. And we've got a front and a back porch. And in the mountains, we can spend a lot of time there. Actually, we're gonna need to spend it on the porch because the house doesn't have air conditioning. Yeah, I know, Arizona's weird. So yeah, if we're 6 feet apart outside, then we can take off our masks. But if we go inside or get closer, we'll put our masks on. How about just having one couple in the kitchen at a time? We'd love to cook for you, but you all can clean up. You wanna do that? Cool. So how does everyone feel about this? Let's share our comfort level. Okay, good. You know what? Let's have a rule. Let's check in every day about how it's going. And whoever of the 4 of us is least comfortable, we're gonna go with that person's comfort level. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think we can do this. We wanna do this. We wanna get to see you, but it is more important that we stay safe. Yeah, we love you too. Can't wait to see you. And we did it. We really did. And each day that we did it, we actually felt better about ourselves and the pandemic. Not worse, but better. We felt empowered. We felt like we were developing tools for how to ask for what we needed ourselves and interact with others in ways that felt safe and that honored our comfort level. And about halfway through the week, I realized what the feeling was. It was radical consent. It was radical consent. Now, you all need to know that I am a fierce defender of consent. As a woman, I have had to learn and convey my own bodily consent to people who did not have my interests at heart. All women know this, and many men do. And many of our trans siblings know it way better than all of us. Many of my generation and older were taught that we didn't have autonomy over our bodies, that boys will be boys was an excuse for us to be harassed, catcalled, groped, and worse. As the mother of sons, you can ask them, I taught them about consent very early. Mostly, I wanted to make sure that they were always respectful of women and their boundaries. But early on, I also had to understand that they needed to protect their own autonomy, that I couldn't assume that because they were young men that they didn't deserve every bit of that same consent. You can ask them. My mantra to them over and over again was, anything less than an enthusiastic yes is a no. Now, I want to be clear to each of you listening that you may have had different experiences with consent. I don't know any women who haven't needed to deal with it being violated on some level. For our trans siblings, I know this is a deeply relevant issue, and I know it is for men too. And I recognize that there may be some listening today who have had it deeply, harmfully violated. Know that while I may be using humor in this sermon, I know that this issue is anything but funny. And I recognize that this may be difficult for you. I love Unitarian Universalism because we teach our kids about healthy sexuality in our whole lives, or OWL program that you heard directly from Katie Resendez. And we are a faith where it may be interesting, but not shocking to hear consent preached about by your minister. So as I delved deeper into how setting boundaries and expectations around COVID interactions was really a radical interpretation of COVID, then it was an onion that just kept giving me more and more layers. So let's unpeel some of these layers together. Setting boundaries and guidelines for our interactions with our friends and family is all about consent. After all, if we get sick, then it is our bodies that suffer. It is our future. We are the ones who know what our comfort level is with that risk. And yes, it may be uncomfortable to ask for what we need and expect, but not asking for it has terrible consequences. I think this is why people who refuse to wear masks are so infuriating to us. My wife calls them mask holes. Yes, you can use that. They make us so absolutely mad. And we look at them and say, don't you understand? This is for your safety, but even more importantly, it's for ours. I mean, it would be one thing if we were watching them make bad decisions that only impacted them, but we know it puts us in danger too. And therefore, it is an issue of consent. Their refusal to wear masks goes against my own bodily autonomy, and we don't get any say about it. It feels like a violation of our health boundaries. And this is most visible with masks, but it's also true with other actions that we know that are unsafe in the pandemic. Eating inside, going to a bar, in-person weddings and funerals, and yes, even watching Garth Brooks hug people after singing at the inauguration. So let's unpeel this onion a little bit more. We may be having conversations about consent and our boundaries for gathering with friends if we are gathering, but it's harder when it comes to family members. How many of you have had challenges with family members saying, oh, I'm okay, you don't need to worry? Doesn't it feel like the equivalent of telling a child that they should sit on their uncle's lap or get a kiss from Auntie Vera? That boundaries are important, but that we need to put them in a different category when it comes to family? And if we think about it, that's totally not true. In fact, family is where we should have the most consent issues, where we should feel the most safe. Let's unpeel it a little bit more. What does it feel like when people do respect your boundaries? When delivery people have masks on when they come to your door, when someone preemptively asks you what interactions you're comfortable with. You get to breathe and settle in. We feel respected. We feel seen as a valued human being. I can tell you that with our friends, it felt freaking awesome. Like we felt very heard and seen as the valuable beings that we are. We felt empowered, and it has buoyed every interaction we've had since then. And what does it feel like when someone doesn't respect your boundaries? When you pass someone in the grocery store without a mask, when you see people wear it under their noses, and we have to communicate your noses are connected, people, when you don't have any choice but to be next to them. What does it feel like in your body? Does it feel like someone is being cavalier with your health or even your life? To me, it feels like they don't care what my boundaries are. And even worse, it feels like they are entitled to my space. You're seeing what entitlement looks like. And we can extend that to so many other scenarios. What if that is true not just for a cough, but also a cat call, or a touch, or a grab? I'm sorry, you are not entitled to that. Back away. Let's unpeel it a little bit more. I want you to imagine people who have experienced trauma and consent violation. Many live like this all the time, constantly waiting for or worrying about someone to cross the lines. Let's look at it a different way. You know, there are plenty of people who don't like hugs. There are plenty of those people in our own congregation. And I have to tell you, UUCP is a hugging community. Remember when we would take time to greet our neighbors in the sanctuary? I was told many times that some people don't come in until after that point because they don't feel comfortable, or that people hug them or touch them without their consent. Maybe now is the opportunity where we can reframe that and see it as the opportunity to receive consent and not to assume it is there. And I have to tell you, I think we're going to be needing to think about this for a long time. I know this won't surprise you, but I've been spending a lot of time thinking about what life is going to be like when we're able to return to in-person gathering. And the truth is we have no idea what it's going to look like. Will we all be able to gather at the same time? Will we still need to wear masks? Will we be able to hug? I know for sure that everyone won't be all vaccinated for a variety of reasons. And I know that people are going to come back with a variety of levels of wishing for consent. Some of you are going to be so hungry for hugs that you will want to hug everyone you can. Everyone, all the time, for a long time. Some of you will be emerging after a long time of not being touched. All that hugging may be just too much touch, too much peopling. You may feel the need to ease in. Some of you will feel safer still wearing masks. Some of you will want to ditch them forever. Some of you will want to sing as loudly as you can, and some of you will still be nervous about that. We're going to need to be very intentional. We can't assume that everyone will be where we are. We'll need to ask for consent. How do you feel about hugging? Would you like a quick hug or a deep one? Do you want me to stand a little bit further away while we talk? Would you like me to keep my mask on? Would that make you feel more comfortable? Is this seat taken, or would you like a little bit more space between us? Okay, let's peel it back one more layer. What if we understand consent on a cultural level? What if we looked at how consent and entitlement were linked when it comes to race? What if we notice that there has been a lack of consent when we interact with people of color, or really any people outside of the white dominant culture? It can be adopting a different culture as ours without understanding it. It could be asking to touch a Black person's hair. It can be assuming that we are entitled to someone's story, or that we are entitled to them educating us about race, our attitudes, how to behave, anything. Because isn't that just another violation of consent? And doesn't our culture say that we can just take it? Can we stretch from mask holes to being more culturally aware? So here's what I'm saying. This experience gives us an opportunity to think about consent more deeply on so many levels. No matter how we've experienced before, if we've experienced the lack of it in a sexual context or in a health and virus context. Now that we've gone through this and now that we recognize it for what it is, we can't unknow it. And that's a good thing. We have the opportunity to take this awful time when we have to have these conversations to keep us safe, when we have to wear masks and keep socially and physically distant, when we have to be afraid of people getting too close to us. Let's take something good from this. May we be conscious of our own boundaries of consent. May we ask others what their boundaries are and then remember them and respect them. Let's remember that people's boundaries will change and not to assume that just because you had a conversation one time, that it's true the next time. Let's acknowledge that that consent level will change. May we show that we really care about each other, not just whether we get COVID or not, but in all areas of physical and emotional safety. We can learn from this, and we can be better. Let's prove that it may be so.
Thank you, Christine. Yeah, may it be so. I want to share a song of hope with you now. It's the great African-American spiritual, I'm Gonna Sit at the Welcome Table. And the folks who sang this first were not allowed at the table, right? That's part of what this song is about. But they dreamed of a bigger table, a table big enough for all God's children, and a world where no one is mistreated. And that's a dream that will benefit all of us. We should all sing about. Lyrics will be in the chat. I'm gonna sit at the welcome table. I'm gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. Hallelujah. I'm gonna sit at the welcome table. Gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days, one of these days. I'm gonna feast on milk and honey. I'm gonna feast on milk and honey one of these days. Hallelujah. I'm gonna feast on milk and honey. Gonna feast on milk and honey one of these days, one of these days. And I'm gonna tell God how you treat me. Oh, I'm gonna tell God how you treat me one of these days. Hallelujah. I'm gonna tell God how you treat me. I'm gonna tell God how you treat me one of these days, one of these days. Everybody now, all God's children gonna sit together. Yes, all God's children gonna sit together one of these days. Hallelujah. All God's children gonna sit together. All God's children gonna sit together one of these days, one of these days. And I'm gonna sit at the welcome table. I'm gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. Hallelujah. I'm gonna sit at the welcome table. Gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days, one of these days.
Love your lyric changes, Benji. I love them. Before closing words, we'd like to invite you to coffee hour after the service. The rooms are posted in the chat and they'll be on the final slide. Visitors, remember that we have a Get to Know UUCP gathering. We hope that you will join us. Know that you do not need to be in the Phoenix area to join us. We've got people joining us wanting to get to know about us all over the country, actually internationally. And a reminder to check on each other. You heard during Joys and Sorrows, there is a lot of struggle right now. Check on each other, love on each other. As Unitarian Universalists, we are constantly building the world we want to live in. Let us think about radical consent. May we take the learnings of this wreck of a pandemic and use it to create a more mutually caring and intentionally aware community. May we use it to strengthen our bonds and grow as human beings. Go in peace, go in love, go in radical consent.